BBC is a publicly owned company, which means it's owned by the public and is able to broadcast to the nation because we pay TV license. Broadcasting includes radio, television and other electronic media outlets whose main target is public service. Public broadcasters receive funding from various sources including license fees, individual contributions, public financing and commercial financing. This kind of structure affects what they produce because they have to make programs for a wide range of audience who are different ages as well as different genders and will most likely have different tastes, which is why it splits into channels aimed at specific audiences so it can keep everybody entertained with the right shows for the right audience. Like BBC One and Two, who aim at content for adults, which shows like The Apprentice and Miss Brown's Boys, which most teens and young children would find boring. BBC Three, who aims at teens and young adults by having such shows as Family Guy and Russell Howard's Good News. And finally there's CBeebies and CBBC, which are both aimed at children, showing things like Horrible Histories and Teletubbies, which are shows that wouldn't appeal to adults or young adults, as well as compete their rivals and keep to their remit, which is to inform, educate and entertain, which it does throughout showing TV shows such as these shows mentioned. The BBC's flagship shows are most likely Doctor Who, Top Gear, Sherlock and Downton Abbey, and many more. Being the most popular shows on the BBC because all of them are most watched around the world as well as in the United Kingdom, and also no doubt BBC's biggest money makers with all the merchandise and DVD sales. For example, Doctor Who is shown worldwide and it keeps the public entertained, which no doubt brings more money in for them because of this reason. The BBC's main competitors are ITV, Channel 4 and Sky, because they are the ones with the most weekly viewers out of all the channels in the United Kingdom. But according to Barb, BBC have the most weekly views with 32.7%, followed by ITV, which have 19.6%. Then finally to Channel 4 and Sky, who are on 11.7 and 9.7%, which shows that the BBC is the most watched channel. BBC is the only one that provides TV to areas outside of the UK, providing TV to countries all around Europe and America. Whereas Sky, ITV and Channel 4 only provide TV for the UK. But BBC is the second TV company in terms of revenue, with Sky in front earning around £7 billion and BBC following with £5 billion, which is still a lot more than ITV and Channel 4. For their channels aimed at kids, and main competitors are Disney, CITV, Nickelodeon, Boomerang and Cartoon Network, because they are the only kids channels and most popular out of all of them. The most successful company would be BBC in my opinion, because they're bringing in most viewers weekly and making money by producing original content for their audiences. Unlike Sky, who tend to buy successful shows off their companies from abroad, such as Boardwalk Empire, which is made by HBO and shown in the UK by Sky. This shows that BBC is more successful. I think yes, because it seems to be working for them, because they're still making good quality shows and they're also making a good profit, which shows there's no problem with being a publicly owned company. Also, Channel 4, which is also a publicly owned TV company, is also doing quite well, so it proves that you can successfully as publicly owned TV channel. BBC and many other channels have developed technology to be able to stream the audience's favourite shows online using BBC iPlayer, so they never miss a show, and having all their channels in HD, which provides them with better viewing experience. The new technology is helping the TV channels like the BBC in forcing them to update their methods and keep up the latest in entertainment technology to provide better service and keep up with their rivals. The impact this new technology is having on the audience and the TV industry is that in some cases it's forcing each of them to upgrade to be able to enjoy the latest in entertainment, like 3D TVs being the latest from technology, which the BBC tried to give a trial run for between 2011 to 2013 by showing events and TV shows such as Olympic Games and Strictly Come Dancing. But the last programme to be televised in 3D was Doctor Who's anniversary episode, The Day of the Doctor. The BBC decided to give up on its due to lack of appetite. I think the BBC will try to adapt to the ever-changing technology to keep ahead of their competitors, which them already trying out the latest in TV viewing by filming some of Wimbledon in UHD, which is known to show a picture quality that is close to real life. They will most likely continue to adapt with the new technology, possibly giving it trails similar to what they did with 3D TVs, but only keep it if they are getting the audience for it. Otherwise, they may stick to what brings the audience in.
Marvel Studios LLC, which means it's a private company whose owners are legally responsible for its debt. It's been this way since 2009, when the Walt Disney Company purchased Marvel Entertainment LLC for $4 billion and everything to do with Marvel, including Marvel Studios. This kind of structure doesn't really affect their films, but because Disney bought them, they tend to create content for a certain age group, which is usually the ages of 12 plus, by making films like Iron Man, The Avengers, Captain America, Guardians of the Galaxy X, who are probably Marvel's most child-friendly characters, with the added adult humour like in Guardians of the Galaxy, where Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt, puts his middle finger up and the odd swear word, which means they attract the whole family to watch the films. And because Marvel is a private company, they can decide on what the budgets are right for what films. Being a private company also means that Marvel don't have to cater to suit everyone, just the intended audience, so most of Marvel's content is based on their comics that they produce, so that doesn't really change to suit what everyone else would want to see. So it's usually comic book fans that would go and watch these films when they are out at the cinema. The flagship films are Iron Man, The Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, which are the movie franchises that are still under Marvel's controls. And also, having made the most in the box office, they produce this content because it's the most child-friendly, which means they can put it out to a wider audience, and also it makes the most money for the company. For example, Marvel's The Avengers made over $1.5 billion worldwide and is also holding the all-time opening weekend record in the US, as well as breaking numerous other records. And Guardians of the Galaxy managed to do well in the box office as well, making $774 million worldwide, and the Iron Man franchise combined made $1 billion, which shows that these films are Marvel's biggest money makers. And if you include the toys, comics, games, costumes, clothing, and video games, and other merchandise that's being made, then the total is even higher. They'd also make money in merchandise from the characters that they don't own the film rights to anymore, like Spider-Man, X-Men, and possibly Fantastic Four. Because of the success of them films, they bring the comic book characters to a wider audience, and this may influence them to buy the comics for themselves or their children. For example, the Guardian newspaper reported that the release of the Avengers movie in 2012 caused a huge rise in sales for the Avengers comic books, with 7 million copies being sold in the same year, with this figure being a raise from the figure from the previous year, which was 3 million comic books less, which shows that these films are having an impact on the overall company, and that with the popularity of their films building, so is the interest in the comic books heroes themselves. Competitors for Marvel is Warner Bros. DC Comics, who are the only other company to make superhero films that can be compared just as successful as Marvel with superhero films. But Marvel are more successful with films than DC, according to a report by Bloomberg. Marvel have outperformed DC in making movies, with them releasing 28 films in the past 2 decades, and DC only making 23 in the past 3 decades. Also, the report says that Marvel has generated 47% more in domestic box office sales on average than DC Comics movies, with the 28 films having averaged $190 million and DC with $129 million for 23 DC Comics movies, starting with Superman in 1978. But DC are more successful with TV shows in terms of how many programs they have on air, with them making shows such as Arrow, The Flash, and Batman related shows, whereas Marvel haven't made many shows for TV, with their most well known show being Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In terms of revenue, Marvel's parent company, the Walt Disney Company, makes $48.8 billion in revenue, which is a lot more than DC's parent company. DC's parent company, Warner Bros., is making revenue only $12.3 billion, which is nothing compared to what DC is making. Which is nothing what Disney is making. Overall, I think Marvel are the most successful because they can afford a bigger budget and have more interesting characters, which means they have the freedom to do whatever they want in their movies. Also, if you compare both the films franchise, Marvel are making a lot more movies in less time than DC are, which means they're going to get more money. The developments in technology mean that things such as 4D seats and 3D sound are available to theatres to provide the best viewing experience for the audience, and also trying to stop piracy, which so far isn't working, with the people who are pirating the films being able to keep up with them, as what happened with 3D films when they were first introduced to stop piracy. But modern technology being introduced means things like 4D seats are around, which is when the seats move along with the object on the film and match its movement and make the audience feel as if they were a part of the film, which helps promote a better viewing experience because it'd be like, for example, it'd be like life. It'd be lifelike. For example, if there was a jet on screen, you'd match it so it feels like you're flying the jet and involved with the story. And 3D sound is when the sound comes from different angles at different times around the person to also give them a better viewing experience for the audience, and also making it more realistic for them. For example, if you hear raindrops falling near you, depending where it is, it'll sound different, which makes it sound like it's happening in real life around you, so you feel as if you're actually in the film. I think Marvel will produce more hero films in the future of less known characters and maybe get the rights back to superheroes such as X-Men, Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, who are all owned by different studios, which would mean Marvel can bring in the fans of those comic books as well as do a better job with those films than the companies who own them at the moment. Take 20th Century Fox's Fantastic Four. They changed the whole story of Fantastic Four and made it about young adults instead of adults, like it was in the comics, and this annoyed a lot of comic book fans. Marvel getting back these characters and making films would bring in a bigger audience and means that they would probably won't change anything and have it exactly how it is in the comics, which most fans would like. I also think they may try to use different techniques to stay ahead of DC, such as crossovers between superheroes, which happens in the comics a lot with certain characters being joined by other characters in their comics, like when there was a crossover between Spider-Man and Deadpool. This brought more fans to other existing fan base, meaning the audience may get introduced to heroes they've never heard of before.